You think you'd know the exact moment your relationship dies. You think it comes with noise, a fight, a confession, a door slamming so hard the walls shake. But sometimes, and this is the part nobody talks about, sometimes it dies in complete silence, in a restaurant booth, on a random Tuesday afternoon, with the one person she swore was ancient history. This isn't a story about a man who lost control. This is a story about a man who never lost it, not once, not for a single second. And that is what made what he did so devastating. Stay with me, because this story is going to change how you think about betrayal, patience, and what real strength actually looks like. Let me paint you the picture first, because every story like this starts the same way, not with red flags and warning signs, with asterisk normal. He was a regular guy. Good job, good head on his shoulders. The kind of person who showed up not just in the big moments but in the small ones. The fixing dinner on a Tuesday ones. The staying up late because she had a rough day ones. He wasn't perfect. Nobody is, but he was present. And presence, real, consistent, day after day presence, is one of the rarest things a person can offer someone they love. They'd been together for years. Not months, years, shared an apartment, built routines, had inside jokes that only made sense to them. The kind of relationship that from the outside looked completely solid, and for a long time. It was, or at least he believed it was, which, when you think about it, is both the sweetest and most devastating thing about being truly in love with someone. You trust them with the version of reality you share together. You assume what you see is what's real. You don't spend your days looking for proof that the person lying next to you is living a different life. Because why would you? But something had been shifting slowly, quietly. The way a foundation cracks not all at once but inch by inch, until one day you step on the wrong spot and the whole floor gives out. She'd been distant, not dramatically distant. Not in a way that screamed something is wrong. Just less present, more time on her phone, more nights staying out late, more explanations that were just a little too smooth. A little too rehearsed, he noticed. Of course he noticed. But here's the thing about loving someone, really, genuinely loving them, you don't want to be right about the bad things. So you give them the benefit of the doubt. You tell yourself you're overthinking. You remind yourself that relationships have seasons and this is just a cold one. You choose trust. Because that's what love asks of you. And then one day she told him she was traveling, 600 kilometers away, a full week, family visit, nothing to worry about. She said it the way she always said things, casually, confidently, like the idea that he might question it was almost laughable. He nodded, said okay, helped her pack, watched her leave. And then he went back to his life, his quiet, trusting, completely unaware life. That should have been the whole story, her gone for a week, him holding things down at home, her coming back. Life continuing, except, fate has this cruel, precise way of intervening exactly when it needs to. A few days into her family visit, through a sequence of events so random, so perfectly timed, so almost asterisk cinematic in how it unfolded, he found himself in a part of the city he rarely visited. Wrong place, wrong time, or maybe the exact right place at the exact right time, depending on how you look at it. He spotted her before she spotted him. She wasn't 600 kilometers away. She wasn't with family, she was right there, at a table near the window of a restaurant, laughing, relaxed, completely at ease. And across from her, leaning in close, comfortable in a way that told you everything about the history between them, her ex. The same ex she had told him more than once meant absolutely nothing. The same ex who was in the past. The same ex who was just a friend on the rare occasions his name came up. There he was, right there, and there she was, looking happier than she'd looked in months. Now, I need you to stop here for a second, because I want you to really feel what that moment is like. Not just the betrayal itself, though that's its own specific kind of agony, but the shift. The way the world just realigns itself around a new truth. Every memory you have gets instantly re-examined. Every "I love you" suddenly sounds different in your head. Every late night, every vague explanation, every "I'm just tired," all of it snaps into focus. And you realize you weren't overthinking. You were right. You were right the whole time. You just loved her too much to believe it. He stood there for a moment, just watching. And then, and this is where his story separates itself from almost every other story like it, he didn't walk in, didn't confront, didn't text her from the parking lot saying, "I can see you." He did something that required more self-control than most people have on their best day. He took out his phone, and he took pictures. Clear ones, careful ones, undeniable ones, her face, her expression, her ex, the whole scene documented. And then he put his phone back in his pocket, turned around, and walked away. He went home, sat in the apartment, their apartment, full of their things, their furniture, their shared life, and he was completely still. No throwing things, no calling her screaming, no texting her best friend, no posting anything, just stillness. And in that stillness, something remarkable happened. The grief was there. The anger was there. The heartbreak was absolutely there. But something else rose above all of it. Clarity. The kind of clarity that only shows up when you've been pushed past the point of pretending. And in that clarity, a plan began to form. Not a plan born out of revenge, exactly, but a plan born out of one simple, undeniable truth. This was over, not maybe over. Not over if she can't explain herself. Over. And if it was over, then the only question that mattered was this: how do you end it in a way that protects yourself completely? How do you close this chapter without giving her the chance to rewrite the narrative, manipulate the situation, or walk away from her own mess without consequence? He thought about it carefully. And the answer he arrived at was the one nobody ever expects. You don't confront at all. You prepare. That night he pulled out the lease agreement. Read every line. Month-to-month tenancy. 60 days notice required to vacate. One name on the document. His, just his. Her name was not on that lease. Not because of some calculated move he'd made years ago, just the way things had worked out when they first moved in. But now, that detail, that one simple legal detail, was about to become the most important fact in this entire story. The next morning he called the landlord. Calm voice, simple conversation. He explained the situation in broad terms. The landlord, a decent, professional, no-nonsense man, listened, understood, and agreed to cooperate. New tenants were already waiting. There was no shortage of demand for the apartment. Notice was officially given. The clock started ticking, and she had absolutely no idea. Now here's what I want you to think about. Because what came next required something that most people, even people who pride themselves on being calm, on being rational, cannot actually do when they're in pain. He had to go back to normal. She came back from her family visit acting completely unbothered, refreshed, happy, maybe even a little too relaxed, and he had to sit across from her at dinner. Had to answer her questions about his week, had to share a bed with her, while carrying the weight of those photos on his phone, while the lease termination was already filed. While the plan was already in motion, he did it, not because he was cold, but because he understood something that took years of watching people blow up their own advantage to learn. The confrontation is the trap. The moment you show your hand, the moment you let the other person know exactly what you know, you hand them the power. Suddenly they're in control of the narrative. They get to cry. They get to minimize. They get to gaslight. They get to say you're being dramatic, or it wasn't what it looked like, or you don't understand the full story. And half the time, it works, not because the lies are convincing, but because love makes us want to be convinced. He wasn't going to give her that chance. So he stayed distant, quiet, almost kind. He mentioned couples therapy once, not with conviction, just enough to keep her from sensing anything was wrong. She nodded, said that sounded good, said she was glad he wanted to work on things. Then she went right back to staying out late, right back to crashing at a friend's place. She wasn't interested in therapy. She wasn't worried about the relationship. She thought she was winning. What she didn't know was that behind the scenes, everything was already accelerating. A moving crew had been hired. A new apartment had been secured and signed. His belongings were being quietly, carefully sorted, a few things at a time, tucked away where she wouldn't notice. Potential new tenants were touring the apartment while she was at work, or out, or wherever she was. The landlord handled every showing professionally, quietly, not a word out of place. The whole operation ran in silence right beneath her nose, and she never once suspected. Because she was looking for anger, for jealousy, for a man falling apart. She never looked for asterisk stillness. Let me be honest with you about something. The part of this story that's coming next. People never see it coming. Not when they hear it told out loud. Not even when you try to prepare them. There's a moment, and you'll know it when we get there, where everyone who hears this story goes completely quiet. Not because it's violent, not because it's cruel, but because it is so precisely, so flawlessly, so asterisk completely asterisk final. Moving day didn't arrive like a storm. It arrived like a quiet Monday morning, which, if you think about it, was perfect. Before the sun had fully come up, the truck pulled in. The crew arrived professional, efficient, no nonsense. They'd done this kind of job 100 times. They didn't know the full story. They didn't need to. They just needed to know. Boxes, furniture loaded up, clean exit. And that's exactly what they did. By the time she started stirring in the bedroom, half the living room was already gone. The couch loaded, the bookshelf wrapped and out the door. The coffee table, the one they'd debated at the furniture store almost 2 years ago, already on the truck. The apartment was transforming, room by room, into an empty shell. And then the bedroom door opened. She stood there, half awake, hair messy, eyes adjusting, and then her eyes started moving around the room, processing the missing furniture. The movers moving efficiently around her. The boxes, the tape, the quiet, relentless, organized finality of it all. And you could see the exact moment her brain caught up to her eyes. "What's going on?" she asked it quietly at first. Like she was hoping, genuinely hoping, there was some reasonable explanation. That maybe he was donating some stuff, or redecorating, or literally anything other than what was actually happening. He turned and looked at her, and for the first time in weeks truly, fully looked at her. No pretending. No carefully managed distance. Just him looking at her, knowing everything, feeling everything, and choosing one final time to stay completely calm. He walked to the table, and he placed the photos down, one by one by one. Her laughing, her leaning in, her ex right there across from her in a restaurant hundreds of miles from where she claimed to be, printed, dated, undeniable. The silence that filled that room in the seconds after those photos hit the table was the loudest silence you'll ever hear described. Her face moved through every stage in about 3 seconds. Confusion, recognition, fear. And then, because it always comes last, because it's the final defense mechanism of someone who has absolutely nothing left, anger. She started talking, fast, defensive, reaching. "It's not what you think. You don't understand the full story. Let me explain," she kept talking. He didn't say a word, he just turned back to the movers. "Keep going." That's when the landlord arrived. Calm, professional, not unkind, just completely, immovably matter of fact. He introduced himself. Explained the situation clearly and without drama. The lease was ending. The notice period had been given weeks ago, properly, legally, documented. New tenants were already scheduled to move in. The apartment needed to be fully cleared today. She had until midnight. After midnight, anything remaining in the unit would be treated as abandoned property. She looked at the landlord, then at the movers, then at him, and something shifted, because up until that moment, some part of her had still been operating on the assumption that this was a fight, that this was a confrontation, that there was still a negotiation to be had. The landlord's calm, professional, completely indifferent delivery ended that assumption permanently. This wasn't a fight. This was already over. She turned back to him, her voice cracked this time. "Stop this, please, just stop and let's talk." And he looked at her for a long, quiet moment. And then he said the words that years later everyone who knows this story still remembers. He said, "There's nothing to talk about. I saw you. I know everything. The moment I took those photos, we were done." Then he turned away. She tried everything after that, every line from the playbook. It meant nothing. It was a mistake. She was stressed. They'd been going through a rough patch. He'd been distant too. It wasn't physical. It only happened once. He let her talk, not because he was being cruel, but because he already understood something most people take years to learn. Arguments are for people who still have something to fight for. He didn't. This was done. The calls started next. She sat on the floor at some point, not dramatically, just ran out of places to stand and started working through her phone. First one friend, then another, then another. Hushed, urgent, panicked. "I need somewhere to stay tonight. Can you please come get me? I'll explain everything later, I just need help right now." Do you know how many people showed up immediately? Not many. Because here's the thing about building your life on a foundation of secrets. When it all collapses at once, you usually collapse alone. The friends who were always there, suddenly unavailable. Suddenly complicated. Turns out being a reliable friend is a two-way street, and she had not always been reliable. He watched it all from a quiet distance, the movers working around her, her bags in a pile in the corner, the apartment growing emptier by the hour. And at some point, not to humiliate her, not for anyone else, he took out his phone, and he took one final photo. Her. On the floor, surrounded by the last remnants of a life she'd chosen to throw away, not for social media, not for proof, just to remember. This was the real ending, not the restaurant, not the photos on the table, this. She looked up when she heard the shutter click, and for just a second, just one brief, unguarded second, the defensiveness was gone. What was left was something much harder to look at. She knew, not just that she'd been caught, but that she had thrown away something real. Something that was flawed and messy and imperfect in the way all real things are. And she had thrown it away for nothing. For a man who was never going to choose her. For a secret that was never going to become a life. She knew, and he knew that she knew, and neither of them said a single word. By 11:47 p.m., a car finally pulled up outside. One friend. The one who answered. She came up, grabbed a bag, gave an awkward hug. Eyes flicking to him once, then quickly away. They picked up the bags, walked out. The door closed, not slammed, just closed. Quietly, the same way this whole thing had been handled from the very beginning. He stood in the empty apartment for a long moment, listened to the silence, looked at the bare walls, the vacant rooms, the space where a whole shared life used to exist, and then, for the first time in weeks, he exhaled. 2 days later, new tenants moved in. Fresh energy, clean slate. New story beginning in the same space. Her name was already gone from every surface that mattered. She reached out, of course, they always do, texts first, then calls, then voicemails. The voicemails were the most telling. The first ones were still defensive, still trying to reframe the narrative, still searching for the version of the story where she wasn't the villain. Then they shifted, softer, more desperate, saying she missed him, saying she made a mistake, saying she wanted to fix it. All of it went unanswered, all of it got blocked. Because here's something he understood that she never did. Some endings don't require your participation. Now, I told you at the beginning that there was a final detail, a twist. The one that made everyone who heard this story go completely quiet. Here it is. The ex she had risked everything for, he disappeared, not gradually. Not with some long, dramatic conversation about why it couldn't work. He just vanished, stopped answering, stopped showing up, stopped being available. Because men like that, the ones who exist in the shadows of someone else's relationship, the ones who are exciting precisely asterisk because they're forbidden, they're not interested in the reality of a relationship. They're interested in the thrill, and the moment the thrill was gone, the moment she was no longer someone else's girlfriend, no longer the secret, no longer the risk, she became just another woman with a lot of emotional baggage and nowhere to live. And he was gone. So let's account for everything she walked away with. She lost the apartment. She lost the relationship. She lost the stability and the shared life and the person who actually showed up for her. And the person she risked all of it for, gone. She didn't gain a new relationship. She didn't gain freedom. She didn't gain anything. She just lost everything. And he moved into his new place, unpacked his things, set it up exactly how he wanted, no compromises, no negotiations, no quietly resenting the decor choices of someone who was slowly betraying him. Started rebuilding, quietly, at his own pace, with the kind of peace that only comes when you've handled something exactly right. Now, months later, people still talk about this story. His friends, her friends, mutual people who heard it second-hand, third-hand, who shared it like it was folklore. And when people tell it, they always focus on the drama of moving day. The photos on the table, the landlord, the midnight deadline. But the people who really understand it, the ones who sit with it for a while, they focus on something different. They focus on the weeks before, the weeks of knowing, of carrying it quietly, of staying calm when every emotion in him was screaming, of choosing patience over impulse every single day until the moment was exactly right. Because here's the truth about betrayal that nobody wants to hear. Getting cheated on doesn't just hurt your heart. It tries to take your dignity too. It wants you to explode, to humiliate yourself, to send the unhinged texts at 2 a.m., to show up crying or screaming or begging. Because the moment you do any of that, the moment you lose control, you hand the other person a story where they're not fully the villain. He was crazy. She overreacted. It was complicated. He never gave her that, not one single moment of lost control. His dignity was never on the table. And that, more than the moving truck, more than the photos, more than any of it, is what she could never take from him. There's one more thing I want to leave you with. Because this story isn't really about revenge. It's not about making someone else suffer. It's not about winning a breakup. It's about something much more important. It's about knowing your own worth in the worst moment of your life. It's about understanding that the way you respond to betrayal says everything about who you are and nothing about who they are. It's about choosing, even when you're shattered, to walk away with your head up. He didn't just lose a relationship that night. He found something too. He found out exactly who he was under pressure. He found out what he was capable of, not just in terms of the plan, but in terms of character. He found out that he was the kind of person who, even at his lowest, didn't become someone he wouldn't recognize. That's not a small thing. That's everything. So if you're reading this right now, if you're in the middle of something that feels like it's going to break you, I want you to remember this story. Not for the moving truck, not for the photos. Remember it because of what it actually proves. The strongest thing you can do when someone betrays you is refuse to become someone who betrays yourself. Stay calm, think clearly, protect yourself, and then walk away. Let reality handle the rest, because it will, it always does. Karma doesn't rush, but it always arrives on time.